Once again, good morning. And today's class, we are going to start with the second topic in your module 3, which is cache memory organizations. Okay. In the previous class, we saw about bus systems. And in bus, typically, we saw different configurations of your bus and different types like asynchronous versus synchronous, and also uh, we saw what arbitration means and different types of arbitration, correct? Now so the next topic is cache. So what is cache? Any idea what is cache? I think we discussed about it briefly in one of the earlier classes. So any idea who so let's pick somebody. Vishwa. Yeah, so can you just mention what you understand by the term cache? Right, very good. That's exactly what it is, right? Thank you. So cache is more like a buffer which is used to store the frequently accessed uh, uh, data, right? So actually, it's not just frequently accessed data, but it has something called as locality of reference. Okay, meaning so one is the frequently accessed data, so like what Vishwa had mentioned, right? So which means that if I continuously access a particular variable or data, right? Like for example, if you take a loop for I equals to 1 to 100, and then you always check if I is lesser than something, right? So you in that loop, you it's very likely that you're going to access this variable I frequently. Now if that is the case, then it's better to put that variable I in a cache than in a memory. Why? Because as you can see here, there is an interconnection, a bus or a crowbar, a crossbar, or a min structure, so that actually connects it to the memory. Correct. And in general, memory is slow. Why? Because memory is made of DRAM, and DRAM is slower compared to other memory, like cache is faster memory here. So because of all this, right, it's better to put that variable I in the cache itself, so that the processor can quickly access it. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is there's a spatial locality of reference. The first one, what we saw now, is a temporal locality of reference, which means in time, right? So if I access variable I now, it's highly likely that I will access the variable I in the immediate future. Okay, so that's your temporal reference. There's also a spatial reference, which says that, let us say if I am accessing an array a of 0. Okay, it's highly likely that I'm going to access a of 1 in some time. Correct, it's just matter of few cycles. I will definitely refer to a of 1. So similarly, if you take any a, right, any array a of 10, then it's highly likely that I might access a of 9, or I might access a of 11. Okay, so that's your spatial locality. So exploiting these two localities, your caches are designed. Okay, and further, you need to know that cache memory is a faster memory. It's made of SRAMs. That's why you have. So actually, there must be a question that should pop in your head, right? You should say, oh, if cache memory is faster, why can't you make cache itself as main memory? You can't do that because cache is very expensive, because it's made of SRAM. Even though it is faster, it is also expensive. Okay, so the memory technology itself is different between your cache and main memory. So that's why you cannot have a cache as big as your main memory. Okay. Now, in case of multiprocessors, you have private caches. Okay, each processor will have its own cache. Okay, while it's not strictly the case, but mostly this is what it is. Okay, so at some level you will have a private cache. Okay, even if you take your cell phone for example, in your cell phone, your most of you would have a Qualcomm based cell phone, like a Snapdragon or something. So it's all, most likely it's an octa core, and in that octa core every single core has its own cache. Okay, but in addition to that, uh, like out of the octa cores, right, four cores will have one common cache. Okay, so so this diagram is not 100% correct, but that's what is given. But the idea is something like this, right? So you have your processors. So you have 8 processors. If you take your Snapdragon, you have 8 processors. Each one will have its own cache. Okay, but in addition to that, your octa-core is grouped into 4 and 4. So these four will have one cache, and these four will have one cache. And on top of this, all 8 also will have one cache. Okay, so there are multiple levels of cache memory before you can access the actual main memory. Okay, so that's how today's architecture is designed. But anyway, since it's an introduction, we'll just assume that you have private cache. The point is, even though you have multiple processors, each processor will have its own cache. Okay, and there is an interconnection network between your cache and main memory. And main memory again is split into multiple chunks here. Why? Because memory is actually divided into multiple banks, which we will see in the upcoming topic. Okay, and then further you have your IO channels, and followed by your disk. So disk is actually an IO device. So it's actually connected to your main memory through your IO channel. So based on how you are going to address this cache, the cache is divided into two. So one is a physical address cache and a virtual address cache. Now let's have a quick question here. Okay. Hmm. Vishwa, can you point to someone? Soumya? Hey Soumya. So the question is this, right? What kind of address does the CPU understand? Virtual address. Are you sure about it? You guess so. Why do you guess so? Why do you think it's virtual address? No, it's okay. It's okay not to be sure. Let's think about it, right? Why should it be virtual address? What's the point of having a virtual address? You want to get some help? Yeah, yeah, sure. Pick someone. Weibo, can you please help Soumya? Physical. Why do you think it's physical address? You're not sure. Okay. You're not sure. Oh, okay. Soumya is saying it's virtual address, but she's not sure. Vaibhav saying it's physical address, but he's not sure. Let's pick one more person. No, point to someone who can help. Let's see. Hey, Shruti. Good morning. You want to side Vaibhav or Soumya? Whom you want to side? You guess physical again. Why are you guessing? So if you guess, there has to be some reasoning behind it, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's why. Okay, all right. Anyway, thanks, guys. Okay, so the answer is virtual address. Okay, and why virtual address? See, the whole concept of virtual address is to make CPU believe that you have more memory than what you actually have. So if you're actually fooling CPU the whole time. The CPU thinks it has so much memory. So it's always virtual memory, that virtual address that CPU understands. Okay, so keep that in mind. So whatever you see, right, or whatever address you see when you type address off or something like that, right? So whatever address your CPU understands is always virtual address. Okay, so seems like Soumya is correct. Her gut feeling was right. Okay, your intuition is right, Soumya, but we don't know the reason behind that though. Okay, so you need to see why I'm stressing this is because this is not only important for computer architecture perspective, but also if you know, if you want to learn programming, right? So you need to know all these things. We'll see, and cache is one of the most important topics for a programmer. If you know how cache memory works, you can write a code that will actually be very efficient. At the same time, you can also make uh, a system crash, you know. So there was an interesting story, probably I'll save it for later. Okay, so it's something to do with ATI transmeta processor. Okay, so we'll save it for some other time. But anyway, so keep in mind that cache memory is very important, and whatever address your CPU understands is always virtual address. Okay, because the entire concept of virtual addressing is to fool your CPU. It's to make your CPU believe that you have more than what you got. Okay, so now coming to cache, you have two options now. So either make it physical address cache or virtual address cache. Why you have this confusion is because your processor, this guy understands only virtual address, and main memory understands only physical address. Okay, now cache is in between, so that's why you have these two options. Okay, so this is another way you can understand this, right? So your processor always understands virtual address, but your main memory is always physical address, because main memory is physical. Correct? Whatever address your main memory has is the physical address. Okay, so this is where the virtual address is. So this one will get mapped here. Okay, so now cache is in between, so it can follow either this or this. Okay, so that's what you have. Come on. Hey, sorry, I don't want to make you guys feel bad or anything. Okay, huh? I'm just I just want to know how much you have understood, and I want to make it clear. Okay, so it's not just about by hearting things or anything like that. So if you understand the fundamentals well, right, even the toughest subjects like ACA, you can crack it. Okay, all you need to know is your fundamentals to be really strong. And cache memory is one of the most fundamental concepts, even for a programmer, right? Don't think of this as a hardware kind of thing. Anyway, and coming to physical address, uh, so as you see, CPU will actually give a virtual address. Okay, it's because CPU thinks you have so much memory, right? It gives you a virtual address. Hey, take this virtual address and give me the data. and then your MMU, we saw in one of the earlier classes, right? MMU is the memory management unit, and there is also a cache associated with it. It's called TLB. It's somewhere here, okay? It's not shown here, but there will be a TLB, which is the cache memory for MMU. So this virtual address, this MMU will convert that to a physical address, okay? Because this is a physical address cache. The cache understands physical address, okay. Now this physical address cache will check whether it is there in its whether it has the data or not. If it has the data, it is a hit. It's going to return that to CPU. If not, it is going to fetch it from the main memory. It's going to be a miss, but it's going to fetch it from your main memory, and then it's going to give it back to CPU, okay. And it's indexed and tagged with physical address. So we'll see what is indexing and tagging, right? So tagging is a way to check whether a given block of data is present in cache or not, okay. You always imagine cache to be like this, right? Cache is something like your bookshelf, and your main memory is something like your library, okay. Now how will it sound if every time you need to go to the library to get one book? Okay, not that you're a voracious reader or anything, but just in case, right? Like if you're reading so much, every time if you want to go to your library, I mean, I'm talking about all these physical libraries. Now I don't know how relevant are these, since now you have all online e-books and all these things. No, we used to have physical libraries where you actually walk into a library, check out a book. Those were the times, right? Pre-COVID. Anyway, so now you have bookshelves, so you don't have to go to library. So what you do is you actually bring like loads of books. We used to actually check out 4 or 5 books at a time, okay. Not that we are going to read everything, but then we'll go bring it and then keep it in our bookshelf. That's your cache, okay. Now every time you want to refer to a book, you're going to go refer to your bookshelf. If the book is not present in the bookshelf, then you'll have to go back to your library and get the book again, get another book, okay. So that's how you can understand this, but there's a subtle difference. I'll tell you what the difference is. Now tagging comes into picture when you want to have an ID associated with these books, right? So you want to check whether this book is present or not, okay. You will go and check, oh, okay, so is this data present or not? So you need a tag for that, okay. So that when the tag is matching with the address that you have, then it means the data is present. Otherwise you'll have to go back to your main memory, okay. So cache lookup must occur after address translation in TLB, okay. So the lookup happens in cache here, not right after the virtual address is out of CPU, okay. So it has to go through a translation, and after translation by MMU and TLB, then you will actually do the lookup in the cache. So on cache miss, you load it from memory. And there are two types here again. There's a write back and a write through. Okay. So when you say a write back, whenever you want to write something to cache, okay. So let us say your CPU wants to write something to your cache. So what happens? So it goes to my MMU, and then it goes to cache, and it writes to the cache. And that's it. End of it. So that's called a write back cache. However, if you think about it, the copy that this cache has, let us say your variable a, okay, you're writing a equals to 10 here, but let us say your a was initially 8, okay, which is in main memory. Now you have updated a as 10, okay. It will not reflect in main memory if it is a write back cache, okay, not immediately. After some point of time, you will have to do an explicit cache flush, which will actually update the value of all the contents of the cache into main memory, okay. Until then, cache will have its own recent copy, it will be 10, and your main memory will have a different copy. But there will be like some problems, right? As you would guess, we might have some kind of concurrency or consistency issues. So to avoid that, there is also a write through policy, where when you want to write something to your cache, so you will go update a equals to 10, and you will also go write a equals to 10 in main memory. You have to go all the way to main memory and write it again. Okay, there are plus and minus for both these things. The problem is the minus for write through cache is every time you need to go access memory again, right? Accessing memory is like again going to library, isn't it? It's something like that. So you have to walk all the way, so it's very expensive. So there are plus and minus of all these, but just know that there are two types of things: write back cache and write through cache. Okay, any questions so far? So the advantages of physical cache is there's no cache flushing on a context switch because everything is physical. So you don't have to pretend anything to your CPU. Whatever the cache has is what the actual data is also. Okay, and there's no aliasing problem. Aliasing problem comes when there is more than two different virtual addresses, right? And then you have a simplistic design. So physical address caching is a very simple design because you're not going to it's a very simple thing. Whatever address you get out of CPU, you translate it, and then everything else becomes physical, correct? And then it requires no intervention from OS because again we are dealing with only physical address cache. MMU takes care of all the translation. However, the main disadvantage is there's a slowdown here because every time you get an address from CPU, you have to translate it. Okay, the MMU has to do the translation. So that's like actually a tedious part. So the alternative is your virtual address cache. So the virtual address here, the indexing and tagging is done as a virtual address. Okay, so here you get the virtual address, and then so you also pass it to MMU. So you still have to do the translation. Okay, uh, if you want to get anything from your main memory, because your main memory always works on physical address. Okay, but what your CPU gives is always virtual address. Okay, now the advantage here is most of the time, since cache is designed to act as a buffer between CPU and main memory, you generally tend to have a higher percentage of hit. Your cache hit will generally be 98% or something like that, the way the cache is designed, right? So most of the time you will actually hit the cache. Okay, you always check the virtual address in cache, and most of the time it will be a hit. And if it is a hit, you don't have to do any translation. Okay, why do you need translation? Because your cache itself deals with virtual address now. It's a virtual address cache, correct? So whatever address your CPU gives, your cache will understand it because it is also dealing with virtual address. There's no translation needed here. Okay, so whenever there is a hit, then it's going to be a very fast operation. Okay, so this is also virtual address, correct? So if there is a hit, then cache will immediately return that value to your CPU. No translation is required. Only if there is a miss, then you will have to do a translation, and then you get the physical address, and then you get back the data back to your cache. Okay, so only if there is a miss, you need to do all these extra hassle, which is not very frequent. Okay, so that way virtual address cache is advantageous. Okay, so both the translation and validation, they are done in parallel here. So because you can, previously it was not the case, right? At first you have to always do a translation, and then only you have to look up. But here you can, if it is a hit, you don't even have to translate. Okay, so and the physical address generated by MMU can be saved in the tags, okay, for later write back. So you always save the tags so that you can match it with the main memory. Okay, so the advantages, so address translation only on a cache miss, and faster hits, of course. Why? Because you don't have to do translation every time, and then it's definitely efficient than the other one. But the problem is when there is a context switch, you need to do cache flush. So when you have a context switch, then your entire uh, virtual addressing changes, right? So you actually swap in and swap out. So the same virtual address may not have valid data. Okay, so then you may have to do a cache flush, and then I mean only during your context switch. And then several virtual address cannot span the physical address without being duplicated. So that's the aliasing problem we saw. Okay, so these are the disadvantages of virtual cache. All right, so now time for some quiz. Let's pick somebody. Shruti, can you point to someone? Chaitra, Chaitra, are you there? Swedel, are you there? Hey, Swedel, can you point to someone who has not answered so far, whom we have not picked? That'd be like some, yeah. Bhuvaneshwari, can you please unmute? Yeah. Can we attempt to answer this quiz question? Which type of cache address translation by MMU happens even on a hit? I'm sorry. Why is that? Why do you think it is B? B is virtual addressed cache. So in a virtual addressed cache, every time there should be a hit. Is that correct? Why is that? You can ask your friend if you don't know. Fine. If you want to pick somebody, right, whom you can get help from. Please feel free to yeah, ask your friends. Yeah, yeah, of course, please. Sumati, are you there? Please help Bhuvaneshwari. Yeah, ask your friend. It's okay. If you don't know, don't feel bad. You ask your friend. Shreya, why is that? Why do you think that way? Huh. Okay, but what's the question? Why even on hit you need to do translation in a virtual addressed cache? So this is what your virtual addressed cache is, right? Whenever you have a hit, you don't need to do translation, right? So on a virtual addressed cache, your cache already is a virtual address. So you do, what is the need for translation? Address translation is not needed in virtual address. So, but the question says address translation happens even on a hit. Let's quickly go back. So, if you take this, right, this is physical address cache. Even if there is a hit, you have to go through an address translation. Okay, because your cache is physical address and your CPU is virtual address. So you need somebody to translate, and only after translation you will understand whether it's a hit or a miss. Okay, so now let's try to answer this. So what's the answer? Physical. Okay, why is that? Bhuvaneshwari, did you understand? Okay, why didn't you ask them? See, if you take a physical addressed cache, it's something like this, right? You imagine CPU to be one person and then cache to be another person. Okay, so CPU talks in one language. Okay, so let's say CPU talks only in Hindi and cache understands only Kannada. It doesn't understand Hindi. Then you need some translator, right? So CPU is asking a question. Huh? CPU, when CPU asks a question, cache will not understand whether it knows the answer or not. It doesn't know. It needs somebody to translate the question first. If somebody is asking me, what's your name in Hindi, maybe cache doesn't understand it. Doesn't mean cache doesn't know its name. You got it? So you always need an MMU, like a translator that says, oh, okay, this is what CPU is asking. Then cache will say whether it knows the answer or not. Okay. So that is like your equivalent of your hit versus miss, because they are talking two different languages here. So CPU is asking a virtual address, but cache understands only physical address. So whether you have the data with you or not, you will come to know only after somebody translates it for you. But if you take your virtual address cache, that is not the case. In virtual address cache, cache itself can understand. So both of them can talk in Hindi. Okay, so this is also virtual address, this is also virtual address. So this is virtual address cache. Okay, now both of them are talking the same language. So CPU, when it asks a question, if cache has the answer, it can immediately answer this. Okay, if it doesn't know the answer, then it has to go check with MMU and say, hey, I don't know the answer, can you please help? So MMU is going to bring that answer to your cache. Only on a miss, you go to MMU. In case of a hit, your CPU, your cache itself will give the answer, because both of them talk the same language. This is also virtual address, this is also virtual address. Got it? Bhuvaneshwari, did you understand? Sumati, did you understand? And who was the other person? Shreya, did you understand? Okay. All right, good. Nice. You stopped me, okay? If I whatever I say goes above your head, doesn't mean that you have a problem. It actually means I have a problem. Okay. See, I have to make the class uh, that is understandable by everyone. If it goes above your head, don't think it's your problem. Okay, you are not understanding. So it's my job to make you understand. Okay, so you just point, raise a finger, ping. Okay, just put a chat message saying I didn't understand. Please explain again. That's all it takes. Okay. Oh, what's this animation gone wrong? Okay, so next we have cache mapping. Okay, so mapping between cache and main memory. Now how are things mapped between cache and main memory, right? So I told you an analogy. I told you about how uh, like library books, right? So you bring books from library and put it on your bookshelf. Your bookshelf is your cache memory, and then library is your main memory. But then you don't do a haphazard way, or you don't actually arrange the books in a random order. Okay, so there is a way to do this. Okay, even in your library, if you see, books are not arranged in a random fashion. Correct. You have aisle, like one for computer science related books, you have one aisle. For electrical books, you have one aisle, right? Similar to that, even in your bookshelf, that is how you are supposed to arrange. So that's what you're in cache, that is how you arrange. Okay, so you don't actually bring it's just not a big pool of buffer, but rather you exactly place that book in one position. Okay, and how we are going to map it, there are different ways to do that. That's what we are going to see now. Okay, so the one thing what you need to know understand is it's called as a block frame. A block frame is the block that is in the cache, and in general when you say blocks, it is the uh, blocks in the physical memory. Okay, so this is similar to your page and page frames. Okay, so page means it's in your virtual address, and page frame means it is in your physical memory, right? So similarly here, block frames means it is in a cache, and blocks means it is in your memory. Okay, so now your block frame you represented by this b bar. Okay, and these are the different block frames, 0 through m, and then your blocks are represented by b. Okay, from 0 to n. And what do we understand from m and n? Which is bigger, cache or main memory? Which is bigger? Hello, is cache bigger or main memory bigger? Main memory. Ah, correct. Good. Very good. Nice. So which means m is greater than n or n is greater than m? What's the relation between n and m? Right. N is greater than m. Very good. Nice. I'm really happy. Okay. And n you represented as 2 to the power s, and m you represented as 2 to the power r. Okay. Why? Because it's always addressed in binary, right? So it's always your memory will always be a power of 2, and each block or a block frame has b words. So where you have b is 2 to the power w, so the total. So I'll tell you about these blocks, right? So don't get confused about this. So what we are trying to say is, if you take a memory, it's going to look something like this. Okay, all right. Now this is one byte. Okay, let's say this is byte 0, and then you will have your byte 1, byte 2, and so on. Okay, now as I said, it's not good to just bring one byte from main memory. Okay, you always bring it in bulk. Okay, from memory to cache you always bring in terms of blocks. Correct. So what you do is you're going to combine a bunch of bytes and call it, this is one block. Okay, and this can be multiple words, right? You can have b words that makes a block, and four bytes make one word. Correct. So whatever it is, you understand it in terms of blocks. So there will be like number of words here. Okay, each word is 4 bytes long. So you actually take a big bulk of your memory, and you call everything as a block. Okay, so keep in mind, now your addressing is something like this, right? So Initially it used to be byte addressable, correct? So 0000001 and so on. It's going to be like this, right? Let us say you have eight different eight words that make a block. So then what you have to do, you have to remove these three last bits, correct? All the upper four bits that belong to, so up to 111, right? So 000 to 111, everything will have the upper four bits as 0. Okay, so all of these will belong to the same block. So this is your block address. That's what they're saying here. Okay, so now every block will have so many words. Here in this case, 8 words. If you have B, it will be B words. Okay, so B is 2 to the power W. So your total cache size will become M times B. Okay, so here you just know the number of blocks. We will always refer to blocks when we address cache. Okay, so we will only refer to as block address. This block has 0000 address. Next block will be 0001. But the 0000 is not just one byte, right? It is one block, and that block is this big. You have to keep in mind of that. Okay, so that is what is conveyed here. Any questions on this? Is it clear? Okay. Now we have different mapping. Okay, we have a direct mapping, and then we will skip all these things. Okay, and there is a set associative mapping, and there is a fully associative mapping. I think you would have heard of this in your earlier classes. Okay, now before, I think we will just stick to this slide, but I don't want to rely on slides here. I will just try to explain the cache, this direct mapping, everything in with this. Okay, right. So what is direct mapping? Now again, you always assume this bookshelf library example. Now this is your bookshelf. Okay, so which means it's your cache. Okay, now this is your main memory. Okay, let's remove this. Okay, so let us say you have, so this address is 00011011. Okay, so that's how only 4 blocks you can accommodate in your cache. Let us assume that's the case, and this is your main memory. In main memory you have many blocks, right? So it could be 0000, 0001, 0010, 0011, 0100, and so on, right? So now the way you map between your main memory, it's not like you bring something and then you put in a free spot. Not like our home bookshelves, wherever you have a free spot you just throw your book there. No, it's not like that. In cache it is very nicely organized. What you will do is you will just check the last 2 bits here. Okay, you forget all these things. Okay, the upper bit, just forget all the upper bits. Now what you will do is you just check the lower bit here, and if it is 00, this will come here only. You cannot put it anywhere else. Okay, similarly this guy 01, right? So this guy will go only here, and then 10 will go only here, and then 11 will go only here. Okay, now again there is 00, right? Now this guy will again, he when I want to bring in this guy from main memory, he can only go to this spot. Okay, now this guy and this guy, they have the same last 2 bits, right? They can go to only this spot. Even though this space is empty, You cannot bring this guy, this 100, this guy cannot come here. And it seems like a ridiculous thing, but it is not. The reason is that, see, you have to understand why we are designing cache. Cache is designed to reduce the latency, correct? We want faster access because your registers are so fast. You need something to be matching up to that. Okay, so if the problem is when you put everything in, I mean, anywhere in your cache, then the time it takes for you to check, you must know about your searching algorithm, right? What's the best way to search? If it's not an ordered set, then it definitely has to be order of n, correct? It should be as big as your cache. You have to look through the cache, entire cache, and find out whether you have that address or not. Okay, so let us say I want to find if 0100 is present in my cache or not. Okay, then I don't have to search the entire cache. I will just go check this spot alone. Why? Because 0100 ends with 00, but only this guy can hold. I will just go check here, but I need to check whether this guy is 0000 or this guy is 0100. It can be both, right? So this guy can also be here, this guy can also be here. So what I will do is, now I have decided this spot is only zero zeros, so I will omit that. Now I will just check the upper portion of this guy's address. If it is 01, then it means it is this guy. If it is 00, it is this guy. Okay, so this is called as a tag. That is what we've been talking about, right? Tag. So if you give any address, let us say you have 0101 and then followed by 00. Now what you have to do, this guy will also be mapped to this part, this spot only. But how do you differentiate whether it is 0000 or 0100? You don't, all you need to check is the upper bit. Now you check the address of this guy. If that guy's upper bit is 0101, then you have the right data. You don't have to search the other spots here. Okay, so that is why direct mapping is very useful. But again, the problem is, you actually what to say, it's very restrictive, right? One block can go to exactly one block frame. It is too tight, too restrictive. So what we came up with is called as a set associative cache. In set associative cache, what you have is multiple ways. Okay, so you generally say two way set associative. Okay, so if you say two-way set associative, it means that your cache will have a way, a first way and a second way, way 0 and then way 1, and this is called as a set. This will be a set 0. Okay, instead of calling it as a block, now you refer this to as set. There will be the set 0 0 0 0 1 1 0 1 1. Okay, but you also have multiple ways. You have two ways here. Now what it says is that, now if you take main memory, previously what did we see? If it is 0000 and then 0001 sorry, 00100011 01000101 and so on, right? Am I right? Yeah. So now what will happen is, this guy, you again check the lower bit. Okay, but this time, this guy, this 00 guy, can actually go to set 0, but any of the ways. Okay, so this guy can go to, right, let me check if I can change the ink. It can go to this set. Okay, you just check the lower bits and you say, if it's ending with 00, this guy can go into any of the way in this set. Okay, so this will give you your set, whichever set you belong to. Now which means that you can fit in both your 0000 can also be here, Your 0 1 0 0 can also be here. Why? Because both of them belong to the same set, but they can fit in any way. Okay, again, in this you have to do extra checking, because you have to check both the ways. You have to check, let us say you have a tag 0 1 0 1 0 0, then this means that this guy belongs to set 0, but then I have to check the tag. This tag is 0 0. Okay, no, not this guy. Let me check here. This guy is 0 1. It's not this guy, but what we need is this tag. Okay, if there is a tag match, then I will say hit. Otherwise, it is a miss. Okay, so that is about your set associative. Any questions on this? Is it clear, guys? Hello. Okay. So this is very important. Okay. So the next one, what you have is something called as a fully associative. Okay. So here it goes to the other extreme. What you will do is you will only have one set. Okay. So you have set 0. That's all. Only one set. But you have multiple ways. Way 0, way 1, way 2, and so on. Which means that your entire main memory, right? So this is like our bookshelf. Books can go anywhere in our bookshelf. So this is 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 1. This guy can go here. This guy can also go here. Everybody can go to the same set, but it can be in any way. The only problem is you have to check the entire cache. So this is your entire cache. Your cache is now like this instead of like this. Okay, so you have to check the tag for all throughout the cache. Okay, the tagging is a problem, but again it gives you the flexibility that you can place your uh, block anywhere in your cache. Everything is just single set. That is called as your fully associative cache. Okay, now that is how your cache is designed. Now let's come back to the presentation. Okay, so in this we'll just quickly wrap it up. I just told you this one, right? So direct map cache. So the idea is, why I wanted to check this is, it's just a modulo function. Okay, so you have n elements in your n blocks in your memory, and then m blocks out of which is your cache. So n by m, right? So that is how much blocks you can accommodate. Like how these are the total memory blocks. Okay, so in other words, let us say you have a cache with 64 KB and a main memory of 32 MB. Now your value for your M is 2 power 11 and N is 2 power 20. Okay, now every there for any given block or block frame, any given block frame, you can have 512 different memory block that can be mapped. In other words, what we are trying to say here is, so let us say you have, this is your cache, okay, and this is your memory. So on, right? So this guy will come here, this guy, second guy will go here. Okay, actually, let's go back to the previous diagram instead of me drawing. Yeah, if you take this figure, right? So if you see B0 is mapped to this B bar 0, and then B4 will also be mapped, and then B8 will also be mapped, B12 will also be mapped. Okay, B16 will also be mapped, right? Everything will be mapped to here. If you count how many will get mapped, it's nothing but that formula that you have, right? So 512 according to that example. So how, if you want to know how many blocks will get mapped to the same block frame, you can get that number by doing this 2 power s minus r. Okay, you just divide n by m, and that's how many, this 512 blocks of memory will map to the same location in your block frame. Okay, so that's all about this, and this is how the word the address is split. Okay, so this is the words I was talking about. your single block can have multiple words, and then you have the set, right? So we saw which set your actual block belongs to, and only it can only go to one set, right? So it can only go to this set, but anywhere, any block frame in this set it can go. To differentiate which block frame it has to go to, you check the tag bit. So you check only these two tags, and if it matches, it is hit, otherwise it's a miss. Got it? Okay. So that's all about cache memory. So now to have a quick question. So let's have somebody answer this. Vikas, can you please answer this? A block in memory has exactly one block frame mapped in a. Vikas, are you there? Vikas, Sweetel, you want to go for it? Yeah, it's direct map, right? So in direct map, you exactly have only one block frame it can be mapped to. Okay, in set associative, if it's a two-way set associative, it can be mapped to one set, but you will have two spots, right? Way 0 and way 1. In fully associative, it can be mapped anywhere. Okay. Oh, there's also the sector mapped cache. I just will quickly mention, nothing big. So your secondary memory will have sectors, right? So you divide, instead of just blocks, you also consolidate your blocks into sectors, and then you do a fully associative mapping. Okay, so that's what your sector mapped cache means. Okay, with that we come to the end. So this is a performance curve for your caches. So it says like how your, as your cache size increases, how your hit ratio gets better, and things like that. Okay, and finally you have, like I mentioned, you have multiple levels of cache. You will not have only one cache, you will have multiple levels of cache between processor and main memory. Okay, so with that we come to the end of today's class. Okay, you can give your attendance and can drop. Okay. Thank you guys.